Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Learn Linux TV, and also welcome back to my Netdata course. At this point, we've actually reached the final episode in the series, and I can hardly believe that our journey is coming to an end. Well, actually, I'm still going to be covering Netdata going forward, so this is almost like a beginning of sorts, because this course will serve as the foundation for any future Netdata videos that I might create. What we're going to do in this particular video is go over a recap of the series so far, and then after that, we'll get into our final lessons. So if you're ready to go, then I'm ready to go, so let's get started right now. In this section, I'm going to go over a quick summary of the course so far. And while I do so, consider any topics that we've already covered you might need to brush up on. I'll mention the episode number during each portion of the recap, so if you need to go back and re-watch a video for yourself, you'll know exactly which ones to check out. And I recommend that you do exactly that. Sometimes earlier topics can become even more clear towards the end, so making sure you fully understand everything will give you much more out of this course. The first episode was an introduction lecture that went over what Netdata actually is and how it differs from other solutions. In particular, we learned that Netdata is a utility you can install on your servers to monitor important metrics and help you be more proactive. And as a system administrator, that's very important. Taking action quickly is key, and Netdata helps us see what's important so we know what exactly to focus our attention on. I also went over why my company, Learn Linux TV, decided to switch to Netdata. This had nothing to do with Netdata's sponsoring of this series. I legitimately felt that it was the right solution for me. In fact, I started using Netdata before Netdata themselves knew who I was. A friend recommended it to me, and I've been using it ever since. I enjoy the fact that Netdata is a hands-off solution, making me intervene only when I need to fine-tune something that's not standard. It cut my administration time down as well, because I was able to spend less time building config files and more time doing actual work. Also in the first video, we took a look at how Netdata differs from other solutions, with Nagios and Zabbix given as examples. I've used those two solutions personally, and while they are legitimately good solutions, there was just too much overhead for me. I run an entire company by myself, including all the production and system administrator tasks, so being able to get my time back allowed me to focus on the actual work I needed to do. But don't get me wrong, you don't have to replace your current solution with Netdata. You can always continue using your existing solution and add Netdata on top of it. On my end though, even though I was running Nagios and Netdata at the same time at one point in the past, eventually I noticed that I never really looked at Nagios after installing Netdata, so I was able to consolidate it. Other than that, the first video was more or less a summary of this course. While the first video was an introduction and course summary, for the most part, the second video is where the action really started. We began the lesson by setting up some example server instances, and then we proceeded to install Netdata. We used the Kickstart script to do this, which is the primary method for installation. There are, of course, other installation methods, which we touched on. We also learned about native packages, which are Netdata packages that are released upstream for those of you that prefer to stick to using packages that are delivered to you from your distribution's repositories. So if your company has a policy that mandates this, then you can always go that direction. We also took a look at the Netdata service, a systemd unit that runs in the background on your server and streams important metrics for you to view through the Netdata dashboard. We took a look at checking the status of the service, making sure that it's enabled, and we also touched on stopping and restarting the service as well. In the third video, we took a look at the Netdata dashboard. Once installed, Netdata collects important metrics right away without you needing to configure anything. With the Netdata dashboard, we could view the metrics that are created, and most of our time was spent in the dashboard from this point on. In fact, we walked through the majority of the Netdata dashboard in that video, getting a chance to see how the metrics are displayed, viewing graphs, and so on. We even saw an example of creating a custom dashboard as well, and in addition to that, we checked out the Alerts tab so we know where to look and see if there's any problems. When it comes to the fourth video, we focus more on the individual metrics themselves. We saw a preview in video 3, but video 4 went in a little deeper on the subject. In particular, we took a look at core metrics such as CPU and RAM. Core metrics are those you'll be focusing the most time on and are usually the metrics that all of your servers have in common. For example, regardless of whether a server is serving a database or a website, it'll still utilize core system metrics, So these refer to standard things that all servers have. After that, we took a look at application metrics, which refer to the metrics that are more specific. We learned that Netdata will scan your server and determine what's important right away and begin monitoring it immediately. For example, once you install the MariaDB database engine, Netdata will notice and monitor your server for database metrics. But it wouldn't make sense for Netdata to monitor database engines on a server that doesn't even serve one, so the dynamic nature of Netdata will tune itself to the type of server that you're monitoring instead of forcing you to spend hours tweaking config files. We also took a look at my Kubernetes cluster and how Netdata monitors it. This was an example of an application metric and how Netdata's zero config mentality picked it up right away, and this was in line with Netdata's monitor anything mentality. By the time we reached video number 5, our Netdata knowledge has grown quite a bit. But there was still some ground to cover at this point, most notably logs, which was the main focus of that episode. As we learned, logging itself isn't specific to Netdata. Your servers will create log entries for important events. This is a Linux thing that all distributions do. But Netdata is able to show logging information as well, with a built-in systemd journal feature that picks up logging entries right from systemd and gives us the ability to see them right away from within Netdata. And this means that Netdata gives us most or even all of the information we need all in one dashboard. We also took a look at 2 utilities that can help us in situations where applications don't even use the systemd journal for logging, but can still help us get text-based logs into Netdata. We took a look at log2journal and systemd cat, which enable us to do exactly that. Up until video 6, we've been spending all of our time within the Netdata dashboard looking at graphs, logs, and alerts, but in video 6 we learned that Netdata can help us with proactive monitoring. Proactive monitoring means that whenever possible, the system administrator should be the first to know when there's a problem, not your stakeholders. By having concerns brought to our attention, we can inform stakeholders of problems before they even notice that anything is happening, which benefits trust and reputation. In particular, Netdata's alerting features enable us to be notified immediately when there's a problem, so that way we don't have to spend all of our time staring at graphs. We can receive a notification of an issue to email, SMS, or even a third-party app, so we have full control over how we're notified. I also showed the pushover app that I use personally, which isn't specific to Netdata, but it is an app that's worked quite well for me when it comes to receiving alerts from various apps. But that was just one example. As we learned in video 6, Netdata supports integrations with other third-party solutions, such as Slack and PagerDuty. We also looked at the Netdata Assistant, which is an on-demand AI tool we can use to get additional help while we're working with Netdata. In fact, we can even ask it questions, so that way we can leverage AI within Netdata, but as an optional feature, we could decide when or if to use it depending on the situation. In our previous video, we took a look at troubleshooting. One of the first things we learn as sysadmins is that things happen, and being able to pivot and think quickly helps us get through these types of situations. In particular, we looked at Netdata's Anomaly Advisor, which can help us pinpoint concerns within our infrastructure. With this advisor, we can even find correlating events to help us pinpoint the root cause of an issue, such as a storage server having an issue that then impacts other servers. It's not always apparent what the root cause of something is, but correlating information can help us spot patterns to help narrow down the culprit. We also took a look at some of the logic that's in play when it comes to anomaly detection, including Netdata's principles on the subject and how that factors into its design. We also learned that anomaly detection is designed to be unsupervised, deliver metrics in real time, have integrated features, and we also learned about the assist, advice, and consult principle as well. And that brings us to video number 8, which is the video that you're watching right now. What I'll do from here is go over some of the best practices around Netdata, as well as some advice on maintenance. Before you bring dozens of nodes online, take a moment to sketch out your space. The top-level workspace in Netdata Cloud where nodes, teammates, and billing all live under the same roof. A node can belong to only one space, while people can hop across many and carry role-based permissions that decide whether they just watch dashboards or rewire them. Because of that one node, one space rule, most teams keep a single space and use it as their shared pane of glass, creating additional spaces only when customer contract or separate business units demand hard isolation. All the day-to-day housekeeping, claim tokens, integration toggles, plan changes, sits behind the little gear icon in the sidebar, so grooming your inventory feels as routine as running your nightly apt upgrade. Inside that space, rooms are where real sorting happens. Each room gathers a set of nodes, its own dashboards, its own alert rules, while every node still shows up in the default All Nodes view. You can organize them by stack, for example front end, database, Kubernetes, by geography, such as US East, or spin up a short-lived war room the moment an incident breaks so only the on-call crew sees the noise. And membership can be hands-free. The rule-based room assignment engine watches host labels and, in real time, includes or excludes nodes according to your label clauses, exclusion rules, win ties, so containers land in the right room without manual clicks. If you prefer infrastructure as code, the Netdata Terraform provider, or just exporting the Netdata claim rooms when an agent claims, lets you wire rooms during provisioning, giving you fully dynamic dashboards from day one. The result is a living, self-sorting map of your estate that keeps engineers focused on the services that they own while still letting anyone drill down on any node in a click. Next, let's talk about keeping Netdata up to date. This might sound a bit obvious to a good number of you, because as sysadmins we understand that updates are important as they often include security improvements that help us fend off threat actors. When it comes to Netdata, this is no different. Netdata releases new versions constantly, and these releases include either new features, performance improvements, security updates, or even all three. For this reason, keeping Netdata up to date is very important. In fact, the dashboard will even pinpoint which servers have an out-of-date Netdata agent, so that way you can narrow it down. When it comes to how we go about updating Netdata, it's very straightforward. In fact, all you have to do is simply keep the packages on your server up to date. Because Netdata is released as packages that get pulled from your distribution's package manager, by installing packages on your servers regularly, you'll see Netdata updates are often included along with the others. When it all comes down to it, I recommend installing all updates on all of your servers as soon as they're available, and you'll also see that Netdata will be kept up to date as well by doing so. Next, let's talk about alert optimization. By optimizing alerts, we could fine-tune exactly when Netdata triggers and springs into action and sends us an alert. Most of the time, we won't have to do anything here, as Netdata will have logical defaults that will fit the majority of users. But when it comes to system administration, sometimes we'll have servers with more specific triggers being necessary, or even stakeholders with very specific requirements. As we monitor our servers, alert optimization is basically a matter of making sure that things that are important to us are monitored effectively and exactly how we want. For example, consider TLS certificate expiration. It's a great idea to be informed when a certificate is about to expire, so we'll have enough time to order a new one. But maybe we want to be informed with 2 weeks' notice or even a month. Depending on our needs, Netdata's defaults might need to be adjusted from time to time to ensure we have enough notice. Or perhaps you need to achieve a particular response time with a web server and have an alert sent anytime a server responds more slowly than we'd like. By adjusting alerts regularly anytime it's necessary, Netdata becomes a solution that actually gets better with time as we tune it to fit our needs. During this series, we learned that Netdata streams data through the dashboard. It's not actually being stored anywhere, at least not by default. The great thing about this is that threat actors can't steal data a server doesn't have, so by streaming metrics rather than storing them, Netdata is also more secure. However, it's important to take retention into account. Perhaps you do need to store metrics, which can even be a policy requirement for some of you. In fact, in many places, data retention might even be the law. Retention requirements aren't specific to Netdata. Generally, you'll have either a company policy or a local law that mandates how long you need to keep information for, sometimes both. If you aren't aware of retention requirements, you might be in violation of company policy or even create legal issues. Second, you should also be aware that even though Netdata doesn't store information by default, it certainly can. So that way, you can ensure Netdata is operating within compliance guidelines. To facilitate this, Netdata has what's called parents, which are servers that can store Netdata metrics for you. Your individual servers can only send information to a single parent, but as the administrator, you can even set up multiple parents and have groups of nodes sending info to individual parents, so that way you can have a parent for development environments be separate from your production servers. And there's several supported configurations that you should be aware of when it comes to instances that report to a Netdata parent. By default, children contain all of Netdata's functionality. In fact, the installations we've done so far during the course were using this configuration. By children, I'm referring to instances that have Netdata installed. As you've seen, once we install Netdata, we have a local dashboard on each instance, as well as the ability to report to Netdata Cloud. All of the metrics, dashboards, and related features you've seen so far were using this configuration because full is the default. On the other hand, the thin parent configuration has almost none of these features. Children using the thin configuration only collect metrics and forward them to a parent, so in this case, there would be no local dashboard. You just have a server forwarding events to a parent, and that's it. This can also be useful for those of you that don't have any use for a local dashboard and instead just want to view metrics on a primary Netdata server without running a local dashboard if you don't want to use one. When it comes to Netdata's parents, there are 3 configurations to be aware of. First, standalone. Standalone parents are basically exactly what they sound like. These parents can be the top-level parent of a hierarchy or even the only parent in a configuration. A parent within the cluster configuration is part of a group or cluster of parents. If you're looking for high availability, then this is the configuration that you want. And think about it this way: if you have a standalone parent, that also becomes a single point of failure. If that server was to have something happen to it, you might lose information. Sure, we could talk about backups and disaster recovery, which are definitely important, but high availability can greatly minimize data loss. If one Netdata parent goes down, the others still have all of your data, and then you could fix the node that had an issue and get it back online. The third type of configuration is proxy. Proxy parents are useful as well, and they serve kind of a dual purpose. These parents receive metrics and stores them locally, but also forwards information to a top-level parent. Just be aware of the fact that while using multiple levels of centralization, only the top level can be configured as a cluster. As for what parents have to do with best practices, they give you a way for Netdata to meet compliance and reliability needs. While the default configuration within Netdata might be enough for most of you, some companies might have more specific requirements. As a system administrator, you'll need to be aware of what policies are in place and what's required to be in compliance. Sometimes there can be data retention policies which govern how long you need to hold on to data, and if you have such requirements in place, Netdata parents can help you meet them. Keep in mind, by default, Netdata doesn't store anything, so you're immediately out of compliance if there are retention policies in place and you don't adjust your Netdata installation to meet those requirements. Parents let you store information locally, and you could even cluster parents if you want high availability. So that means if you have a policy in place that governs high availability, you can meet that requirement as well. In this section, I want to go over how to get additional help with Netdata and also go over some resources that I think you'll find helpful. And these are in no particular order. And to begin this section, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Learn Linux TV's forums. While not specific to Netdata, it's a great place to go to find assistance or even just chat with other sysadmins. You can ask a question there, and a community member will help you out. You can visit the Learn Linux TV forums at community.learnlinux.tv. But if you want something more specific to Netdata, Netdata has community forums as well. Similar to my forums, Netdata offers a similar experience, but more laser-focused on Netdata. So if you have any Netdata questions that are more specific to Netdata itself, it's a great place to go. You can visit the Netdata community at community.netdata.cloud. Continuing, let's take a look at Netdata's official documentation pages. You can visit this resource at learn.netdata.cloud, and there you'll find all kinds of information about Netdata's feature set, installation, best practices, and more. It's also a great place to go if you want to read more in-depth information on how and why Netdata was designed the way it is, and you'll find additional knowledge there on top of what we've already learned in this course. And you should bookmark this page. It'll definitely come in handy, and it did for me. In addition to that, if you'd like to be more intimately involved with Netdata, consider contributing to Netdata itself. You can assist with the code over on GitHub, develop a new plugin, help with the documentation, or whatever you're comfortable with. By contributing to Netdata, you'll be benefiting many other people that will see value in your contributions. But even if you're not a developer or documentation writer, another great way to volunteer is to answer questions in Netdata's forums. After all, anytime we learn something new, we should pass it on, and that's the Learn Linux TV philosophy. And with that, my Netdata course here on Learn Linux TV has come to a close. But like I mentioned during the intro, this is hardly the end because I'm going to continue to cover Netdata going forward. After all, it's my monitoring tool of choice, so I'm sure there's all kinds of things that you guys still want to learn. If there's something that I haven't covered in this series that you want to know more about, let me know in the comments down below what else I can create for you guys. Anyway, I had a ton of fun producing this series, and if you enjoyed this series, then be sure to click that like button to let YouTube know. Also, if you have any friends or colleagues that would benefit from a course on Netdata, be sure to pass this course along to them. I would appreciate that as well. Anyway, thank you so much for checking out this video and this course, and I'll see you in the next video.